Hello friends. Have you ever wondered what happens when the most curious air sign meets the most mysterious water sign? Imagine a Gemini man, restless, witty, always asking questions, colliding with a Scorpio woman, intense, magnetic, and guarding secrets as if they're sacred treasures. On the surface, they seem like night and day. But is this a case of opposites attracting, or a recipe for inevitable sparks and stormy clashes? Let's peel back the layers of their connection, exploring not just the romance but the very heartbeat of what makes this duo so uniquely fascinating. Chemistry. Initial attraction. When a Gemini man and a Scorpio woman first encounter one another, it often feels like the collision of two entirely different worlds. He enters like a breeze, light, quick, almost playful, while she arrives with the weight of unspoken stories, eyes that seem to read entire volumes in seconds, and a presence that makes people pause without understanding why. For the Gemini, ruled by Mercury, everything is about ideas, words, clever exchanges, and the excitement of discovering something, or someone, new. For the Scorpio, guided by Pluto and Mars, life is about depth, intensity, and the kind of magnetism that doesn't need to shout but still dominates the room. Imagine them at a party. The Gemini man is effortlessly moving through conversations, tossing out witty remarks, asking questions that make others laugh or think, and drawing people toward his charisma like moths toward light. He is lively without even trying, his laughter quick, his gestures animated. In the middle of this whirl of energy stands the Scorpio woman, not needing to circulate because she knows people will eventually find their way to her. She doesn't waste words, doesn't try to entertain, but when she locks eyes with someone, they feel as if they've been chosen. This is where the spark begins. Gemini notices her stillness first, because stillness stands out to someone always in motion. While others laugh at his jokes, she doesn't immediately react. Her gaze is calm, steady, and penetrating. For a man used to being understood instantly, this is baffling. He leans in with curiosity. Why isn't she responding the way everyone else does? What lies behind those eyes that seem both inviting and forbidding? Scorpio, on the other hand, feels him before she fully sees him. She senses energy the way some people sense changes in the weather. His restless excitement cuts through the air. He speaks quickly, but his words are more than chatter. There's a cleverness, a sparkle of intelligence that hints he isn't as superficial as she might have assumed at first glance. She's cautious, because she doesn't give away her attention easily, but there's something about his agility, mental, emotional, even physical, that intrigues her. The attraction is almost paradoxical. Gemini, the air sign, wants to fly higher, expand, discover. Scorpio, the water sign, wants to pull everything deeper, closer, into the hidden undercurrents. They are drawn to one another because each represents what the other lacks. Gemini sees Scorpio as a riddle wrapped in velvet shadows, and he loves riddles. Scorpio sees Gemini as a spark of sunlight darting through her controlled, mysterious world, and though she values privacy, she cannot resist the warmth he radiates. Their chemistry is also fueled by contrast. Gemini's conversations are full of questions. What do you think about this? Did you ever notice that? Imagine if. He loves to stretch ideas like elastic bands, just to see where they'll snap. Scorpio listens, occasionally answering, but mostly measuring his sincerity. She asks fewer questions, but hers land like arrows straight to the center. What do you want? What are you afraid of? Why do you hide behind your words? For a Gemini, who is used to skating across the surface of endless topics, these questions feel like a sudden plunge into icy water. It shocks him, excites him, and terrifies him, all at once. The magnetism at this stage is less about comfort and more about danger. Gemini feels he is chasing something he might never fully catch, and Scorpio feels she is testing whether this man will keep chasing when the path grows darker. It's an attraction built on curiosity, yes, but also on challenge. Each represents a threshold for the other. When their energies mix in the beginning, the air feels charged, as if static electricity is dancing between them. Others around them might notice it too. The way his words speed up slightly when she pays attention, or the way her usually impenetrable expression softens into the faintest smirk when he says something clever. It is not a comfortable attraction, it is thrilling because it feels slightly dangerous, as though both know they are stepping into territory that could change them. For Gemini, this is new. He's drawn to many people. His charm often means there's no shortage of interest, but rarely does someone hold his attention past the initial spark. Scorpio, however, holds back just enough to make him obsessed with knowing more. For Scorpio, this is also unusual. She is cautious with her heart, guarded to the point of being mistrustful, but there's something about his openness, his refusal to carry the same heaviness she does, that makes her wonder if maybe, just maybe, he is worth letting past the gate. And so, the attraction builds like a dance. Gemini leans forward, offering words, wit, and laughter. Scorpio leans back, offering silence, mystery, and intensity. He wants to break down her walls, she wants to see if he is brave enough to climb them. Together, they create a rhythm that is as magnetic as it is unstable, a pull that feels both exhilarating and impossible to resist. Emotional dynamics. Now, here's where things grow complicated, layered, and at times even perilous. Emotional life is the very terrain where Gemini and Scorpio either stumble endlessly or learn to build something transformative out of their opposites. To understand this dynamic, imagine two different languages. Gemini speaks in the quick, darting sentences of intellect, ideas, and rational analysis, while Scorpio communicates in the heavy poetry of soul, longing, and raw feeling. Neither language is wrong, but each often struggles to translate into the other's world. The Gemini man processes emotions in his head first. His instinct when confronted with tension or sadness is to talk it through, deconstruct it, analyze it, and, if possible, diffuse it with humor. He does not linger long in emotional turbulence because his very essence thrives on motion. For him, sitting in one dark corner of the psyche feels suffocating, even unnecessary. He believes life is too fleeting to become trapped in grief, jealousy, or resentment. So he rationalizes, compartmentalizes, and reframes, always aiming to lighten the load. But the Scorpio woman does not just feel emotions, she becomes them. To her, an emotion is not a fleeting state, it is an all-encompassing current that sweeps her into its depths. Love is not just affection, it is devotion, surrender, a merging of souls. Anger is not irritation, it is volcanic fire, threatening to consume everything until it has burned itself out. Pain is not a momentary sting, it is a wound that imprints itself permanently, reshaping how she loves and trusts in the future. She doesn't just move on, she transforms, she carries, she remembers. This is where friction arises. Scorpio may look at Gemini's lightness and see not liberation but avoidance. To her, his tendency to brush off heaviness feels like an inability to meet her in the depths where she resides. She might accuse him of being shallow, emotionally evasive, or even dismissive. Why won't you sit in the darkness with me? She wonders, why do you always have to run toward the light? Meanwhile, Gemini feels overwhelmed by Scorpio's intensity. What she considers honesty and vulnerability, he sometimes perceives as emotional quicksand. He worries that if he lingers too long in her storms, he will lose himself entirely. Her questions feel like cross-examinations. Her silences feel like accusations. When she demands depth, he wonders, why can't we just enjoy what we have instead of pulling it apart piece by piece? Yet hidden inside this mismatch is enormous potential. If they can move past frustration, they begin to see that each holds what the other secretly longs for. Gemini, though he resists heaviness, often yearns for someone to anchor him, to remind him that emotions, when embraced, can be transformative instead of terrifying. Scorpio, though she clings to depth, often craves someone who can bring light into her darker corridors, someone who teaches her that laughter and playfulness can coexist with passion and loyalty. When they balance each other, something extraordinary happens. Gemini shows Scorpio that emotions don't always need to weigh her down. He invites her to dance in the middle of her own storm, to smile even when the water is rising. His gift to her is perspective, that feelings are not prisons but waves that rise and fall, and that sometimes floating is just as important as diving. In turn, Scorpio shows Gemini that emotions are not obstacles to be bypassed but gateways to deeper connection. She teaches him that vulnerability is not weakness but power, that intimacy grows when two people dare to sit together in silence, in honesty, in discomfort. She challenges him to stop running, to look inward, to face what frightens him about attachment, loyalty, and surrender. Her gift to him is depth, the reminder that love is not only about laughter but also about transformation. Their dynamic often feels like air meeting water. Air stirs the surface, creating ripples, carrying droplets upward into mist, lightening what could otherwise become stagnant. Water, in return, cools and grounds, reminding air that not everything needs to move constantly, that stillness can be as powerful as motion. Together, they form a cycle of evaporation and condensation, change and renewal, storm and calm. But for this to work, both must practice respect. Gemini must resist trivializing Scorpio's emotions, no matter how intense they seem. He must learn that her storms are not designed to drown him but to reveal the beauty of surrender. Scorpio must resist demanding that Gemini dive into every emotional abyss with her. She must learn that his lightness is not betrayal but balance, and that his laughter does not erase his loyalty. When these lessons are embraced, the relationship becomes alchemical. They move from simply tolerating each other's differences to actually craving them. Gemini begins to admire the fierce honesty of Scorpio's emotions, how real, how consuming, how utterly alive they make him feel. Scorpio begins to find comfort in Gemini's breezy approach, how freeing, how refreshing, how necessary it is to step out of the dungeon of her own intensity now and then. This is not an easy balance to maintain. They will clash, often. There will be nights when Gemini storms out, needing space, while Scorpio broods in silence, her heart heavy with unspoken hurt. There will be mornings when Scorpio's questions dig too deep, and Gemini deflects with humor that only makes her feel unseen. Yet each time they return to each other, they grow. Each time they forgive, they transform. Ultimately, their emotional dynamics are not about finding sameness but about embracing polarity. They are proof that two very different emotional languages can coexist if both are willing to translate, to compromise, and to learn. He teaches her air, she teaches him water. And together, they discover that love, at its truest, requires both the lightness of breath and the depth of tide. Long-term compatibility. So, what happens when the magnetic spark between a Gemini man and a Scorpio woman is no longer just about glances across the room or conversations that dance on the edge of danger? What happens when they step into the long game, the day-to-day rhythms of life, the shared responsibilities, the unglamorous but profound realities of building a future together? This is where their connection either becomes one of the most rewarding and transformative journeys of their lives or unravels under the pressure of their opposing natures. Long-term compatibility between a Gemini man and a Scorpio woman is not a simple matter. It is not the kind of relationship where everything falls into place seamlessly or where comfort comes easily. Instead, it is a constant negotiation between freedom and loyalty, lightness and intensity, motion and stillness. On the surface, they may look mismatched. He, the restless wanderer who craves experiences and variety. She, the unwavering lover who wants to anchor her partner to her heart with a depth that knows no limits. Yet beneath this tension lies the possibility of growth that neither could achieve alone. The Gemini man views life as an ever-expanding horizon. He wants to keep moving, learning, experimenting, and never feeling confined by rules or routines. His soul thrives on novelty, on the chance to reinvent himself, to chase new ideas, and to keep the world as wide as the sky he belongs to. The Scorpio woman, however, craves stability, not the shallow kind of stability that avoids change, but the deeper kind that binds two souls so tightly that no external storm can tear them apart. For her, love is not an adventure but a destiny, not a passing chapter but an eternal script written into the very fabric of her being. This is why their long-term compatibility feels like an impossible equation at first glance. How can air and water, two elements with such different needs, coexist without extinguishing one another? The truth is, they must learn to compromise, not by erasing their differences, but by weaving them into a shared fabric where both can breathe, both can feel safe, and both can grow. For the Gemini man, the challenge lies in proving that his desire for freedom does not mean an absence of loyalty. Scorpio's greatest fear is betrayal, abandonment, or the sense that she is being loved halfway. If Gemini reassures her, through consistency, honesty, and small but powerful demonstrations of commitment, she will find the strength to release her instinct to control. She will begin to understand that love does not always mean possession, that devotion can exist even alongside freedom. And once Scorpio feels secure, she will give him the space he craves, allowing him to fly without constantly worrying he will never return. For the Scorpio woman, the challenge lies in resisting the urge to tether him too tightly. Her natural instinct is to claim her partner fully, to merge lives until the boundaries between them nearly disappear. While this depth is intoxicating, it can feel suffocating to a Gemini who needs air to breathe. If she can allow him room to move, to explore, to maintain his individuality, he will feel safe enough to stay rather than compelled to flee. Ironically, the more she loosens her grip, the closer he will draw. Longevity between them depends on whether they can transform their conflicts into stepping stones. Every disagreement is an opportunity for growth, if Gemini does not run at the first sign of trouble, and if Scorpio does not try to drown him in emotional intensity. It is a delicate balance, like walking a tightrope high above the ground. One false move, one refusal to bend, and everything can collapse. Yet for those who master this balance, the payoff is extraordinary. A love that is not only passionate but also enduring, not only exciting but also deeply transformative. In a long-term setting, their relationship becomes a kind of alchemy. Gemini brings renewal, fresh air, and the reminder that life should never lose its joy or curiosity. He prevents Scorpio from becoming trapped in her own intensity, showing her that laughter is not betrayal but a form of survival. Scorpio, in turn, offers him a home he never knew he was searching for. She anchors his restless spirit, teaching him that freedom is not just about wandering but also about choosing where to return. She shows him the beauty of loyalty, of depth, of being seen completely by another person and still being loved. There will be challenges, many of them. Scorpio may still struggle with jealousy when Gemini's charm attracts others. Gemini may still feel restless when Scorpio's intensity becomes overwhelming. They will have to confront these patterns over and over, learning to forgive, to trust, to compromise. But each time they succeed, their bond grows stronger, more resilient, and more profound. What makes their long-term compatibility so unique is that it forces both of them to evolve. This is not a relationship where one partner simply adapts to the other. Instead, both must shed old habits and grow into better versions of themselves. Gemini learns the meaning of depth, of commitment, of standing still without feeling caged. Scorpio learns the meaning of lightness, of trust, of letting go without feeling abandoned. Together, they create a love story that is never static but always unfolding. It may not be easy, and it may not always be peaceful, but it will never be dull. For those who succeed, this partnership becomes a lifelong journey of transformation, a love that tests them, shapes them, and ultimately rewards them with something far deeper than fleeting attraction, a connection that evolves as they do, standing the test of time not because it is simple, but because it is worth the struggle. Communication conflict resolution. Communication is, without a doubt, the Gemini man's sharpest tool and brightest gift. He is ruled by Mercury, the planet of words, ideas, and expression, which means language flows from him like water down a mountain stream, quick, sparkling, and always moving. He can engage in endless conversations, switching from philosophy to pop culture to the latest headline without missing a beat. His wit is sharp, his timing impeccable, and his ability to keep a dialogue alive is unmatched. To him, words are not just instruments of clarity but also playthings, things to juggle, bend, twist, and test. He can talk to almost anyone and make them feel like the center of the world, and that is part of his charm. The Scorpio woman, however, comes to communication with an entirely different philosophy. For her, words are sacred. They are not toys. They are daggers or promises, confessions or revelations. She speaks less often, but when she does, every word is deliberate, layered, and weighty with meaning. She listens deeply, not just to what is said but also to what is unsaid. Pauses, silences, the tremor in a voice, these, to Scorpio, communicate as much truth as entire sentences. What she craves in dialogue is not endless chatter but depth, honesty, and the kind of resonance that touches the soul. This fundamental difference creates both fascination and tension between them. In the early stages, Gemini is enchanted by her ability to cut through pretense with a single sentence. Her silences intrigue him because they demand he fill the space with thought, and her intensity challenges him to rise above mere cleverness. For Scorpio, his verbal agility is dazzling. She admires how he can transform a dull room into a lively one with nothing but conversation, how his words carry a sparkle that draws people in. Yet admiration quickly gives way to irritation when their styles collide in conflict. Here's the catch: Gemini loves playfulness, even when discussing serious matters. He believes laughter is a way to survive the weight of life, that even heavy subjects benefit from a light hand. Scorpio, however, sees this tendency as dangerous, even disrespectful. When she opens her heart about something that matters deeply, trust, betrayal, loyalty, fear, she expects presence, stillness, and unwavering seriousness. If Gemini cracks a joke or brushes things off, she feels dismissed. Her silence in response is not empty, it is thunder withheld, a storm gathering strength. To Gemini, that silence feels suffocating, unfair, or even manipulative. Their conflicts often spring from this mismatch. Words meant as playful from Gemini may land as careless to Scorpio. Silence meant as introspection from Scorpio may feel like punishment to Gemini. Misunderstandings pile up, and what began as a simple difference in style can escalate into something larger than either intended. Gemini's quick tongue may say things he doesn't mean, things he forgets minutes later but that Scorpio remembers for years. Scorpio's sharp words, once spoken, cut deep, and Gemini, who avoids heaviness, may struggle to recover from the sting. Yet, beneath these challenges lies the potential for extraordinary growth. If Gemini learns to slow down, to really listen rather than constantly respond, he can unlock Scorpio's trust. His gift of words, when used thoughtfully, becomes a balm rather than a blade. When he resists the urge to deflect with humor, when he pauses long enough to acknowledge her feelings fully, he shows her that his communication is not only clever but also capable of intimacy and honesty. Likewise, if Scorpio learns that not every disagreement demands intensity, she can begin to appreciate Gemini's lighter perspective. She can discover that sometimes conflict doesn't have to be a battle, it can be an opportunity to laugh, to let go, to see things from a different angle. When she relaxes her need for absolute seriousness in every exchange, she opens herself up to the possibility that Gemini's way of communicating is not a threat but a complement. The real key here, the make or break factor, is honesty. Gemini has a tendency, at times, to sugarcoat, to soften truths, or to avoid unpleasant conversations altogether. He does this not out of malice but out of a desire to keep things smooth and untroubled. But Scorpio is no ordinary partner. She can sense dishonesty the way a predator senses movement in the dark. If she detects evasion, if she feels that he is not telling the whole truth, her trust fractures. And once Scorpio's trust is broken, repairing it is one of the hardest tasks in the universe. Thus, Gemini must learn to resist the temptation to dodge. He must speak directly, transparently, and bravely, even when it's uncomfortable. Scorpio, for her part, must learn to listen without always suspecting hidden meanings or ulterior motives. If she approaches his words with trust rather than suspicion, she allows communication to blossom rather than wither. When they succeed, their arguments no longer feel like wars but like opportunities. Gemini's words become the bridge across Scorpio's silences, and Scorpio's depth anchors Gemini's flights of speech. Together, they can turn disagreements into powerful bonding experiences, debates that end not in resentment but in laughter, silences that resolve into understanding rather than estrangement. Their communication, when healthy, becomes one of their strongest pillars. Imagine Gemini's endless words as rivers and Scorpio's silences as the sea. The rivers rush, darting quickly, carrying stories, ideas, and life. The sea waits, vast and deep, absorbing, shaping, transforming. Together, they create tides, movements that are both rhythmic and eternal, rising and falling, but always returning. It is this rhythm that sustains them in the long term, allowing them to fight, to forgive, and to grow stronger each time. In the end, communication between a Gemini man and a Scorpio woman is not just about talking or listening, it is about learning the courage to reveal and the patience to understand. It is about Gemini slowing his tongue to match her silence, and Scorpio softening her silence to meet his words. It is about turning conflict not into a battlefield but into a crucible, where both are shaped, tempered, and bound more tightly than before. Physical intimate connection. Let's not sugarcoat it, this is where sparks don't just fly, they explode. And sometimes those explosions create fireworks while other times they shake the very foundation of their bond. Between a Gemini man and a Scorpio woman, intimacy is never bland, never mechanical, never simply routine. It is either all-consuming passion or playful discovery, and often, it is both at once. For the Gemini man, intimacy is an adventure. He approaches physical connection the same way he approaches life, with curiosity, variety, and an eagerness to experiment. To him, intimacy should be fun, exciting, light, and constantly evolving. He thrives on novelty, not because he cannot commit, but because he fears stagnation. In the bedroom, he wants to laugh, explore, and try new things, treating every encounter as a chance to deepen closeness through playfulness. He believes intimacy should bring joy as much as it brings passion. The Scorpio woman, however, comes at this realm with a vastly different perspective. For her, intimacy is not just about bodies meeting, it is about souls merging. It is sacred, transformative, a ritual of vulnerability where masks fall away and true selves are revealed. She does not take physical connection lightly, she pours her heart, her mind, and her very essence into it. To her, intimacy is the arena where trust is proven, where love is sealed, and where emotions become flesh. At first, this contrast can feel like a clash. When Gemini brings his laughter and light-hearted experimentation, Scorpio may find it shallow, perhaps even dismissive of the weight she assigns to the act. She wants him to understand that intimacy is not a game, that it requires intensity and devotion. Gemini, on the other hand, may wonder why everything must feel so serious, why every touch must carry the weight of eternity. He fears being suffocated by that gravity, while she fears being abandoned in her vulnerability. And yet, here lies the paradox that fuels their chemistry. Gemini's playfulness can awaken sides of Scorpio's sensuality that she keeps hidden even from herself. His curiosity disarms her, gently coaxing her into exploring layers of desire she might have buried under control and intensity. He shows her that passion can be accompanied by laughter, that pleasure can be an adventure, and that intimacy can be joyous as well as profound. Scorpio, who is so used to carrying the emotional weight of the world, begins to realize that letting go can be as intoxicating as diving deep. In return, Scorpio's intensity pulls Gemini into places he never knew existed. She strips away his tendency to skim the surface and challenges him to discover what true surrender feels like. For the first time, he experiences intimacy not only as physical fun but as something transformative. Her depth teaches him that closeness is not just about variety, it's about presence, devotion, and the courage to let another person see your unguarded core. With her, Gemini learns that pleasure becomes infinitely richer when it carries emotional resonance, when it transforms from simple excitement into soul-shaking passion. Together, they create a connection that is volcanic. It erupts in moments of overwhelming passion, unpredictable and uncontainable. Sometimes the intensity can be too much, leaving both exhilarated and exhausted. Sometimes the lightness can feel too frivolous, leaving Scorpio questioning his seriousness. And yet, it is never boring, never dull, never reduced to routine. This pairing thrives on contrast. Gemini's spontaneity, airiness, and play. Scorpio's fire, depth, and raw hunger. The intimacy between them is as unpredictable as weather, at times a playful breeze, at times a raging storm, but always alive. It keeps both of them on their toes, always wondering what comes next. For Gemini, this means he never grows restless. For Scorpio, it means she never feels disinterested. The unpredictability itself becomes part of their bond, making every encounter feel new. In the long run, their physical connection becomes more than just attraction. It becomes the glue that keeps them returning to each other, even after conflicts or misunderstandings. No matter how much they clash in daily life, the bedroom often becomes their sanctuary, the place where differences dissolve and where they remember why they were drawn together in the first place. It is here that their contradictions transform into harmony. His laughter softens her intensity, her passion deepens his curiosity. The beauty of their intimate life is that it evolves. What starts as a battle between lightness and depth grows into a union that contains both. She learns to enjoy the experimentation he brings, seeing it not as a lack of seriousness but as a new dimension of passion. He learns to appreciate the spiritual and emotional depth she offers, realizing that intimacy is not just about fun but also about transcendence. Together, they craft a bond that is not only physical but also emotional, not only exciting but also transformative. In the end, their physical and intimate connection is unforgettable precisely because it defies easy categorization. It is playful yet sacred, light yet intense, experimental yet deeply rooted. It can exhaust them, exhilarate them, challenge them, and heal them. But what it never does is fade. For a Gemini man and a Scorpio woman, intimacy is not just a part of their relationship, it is the flame that keeps the air moving and the water boiling, the spark that ensures their bond, no matter how turbulent, will always burn with life. Shared values, life goals. This is where the real tests begin to shape their union, because shared values and long-term life goals are often the most difficult terrain for a Gemini man and a Scorpio woman to navigate. Attraction, passion, and even strong communication can carry them through the first chapters of their relationship, but when the conversation shifts toward what they both want from life, what they value most deeply and what they imagine their shared future will look like, their differences can no longer be brushed aside. It is here that the core essence of who they are comes to the surface, and it is here that both must learn to bend without breaking. The Gemini man values variety, freedom, and endless exploration. His soul craves movement, traveling to new places, meeting new people, and gathering new experiences like treasures. To him, life is a book with countless pages waiting to be written, and he refuses to stay stuck in just one chapter. His values are rooted in curiosity and expansion. He thrives when he feels the world remains wide, full of open skies and fresh horizons. Settling into rigid routines or sacrificing spontaneity feels, to him, like a slow suffocation of his spirit. The Scorpio woman, however, values stability, loyalty, and depth above all else. Her soul craves permanence, not in the sense of stagnation, but in the sense of building something unshakable, eternal. For her, relationships are sacred bonds, not casual arrangements. She wants a love that is more than companionship. It must be a merging of souls, a devotion that weathers storms without faltering. Her values are rooted in intensity and continuity. She thrives when she knows she is secure, when the ground beneath her is steady, and when her partner's loyalty is unquestionable. It's not difficult to see the potential conflict here. When it comes to life goals, compromises must be made. If Gemini pursues adventure endlessly without pausing to reassure Scorpio of her place in his world, she may feel abandoned, unimportant, or even betrayed. For a woman who gives her entire being when she loves, the thought of being secondary to his wanderlust is devastating. On the other hand, if Scorpio tries to anchor Gemini too tightly, to keep him from exploring, he may feel caged, restless, and desperate to escape. To a man whose very identity is tied to freedom, the thought of being bound too tightly feels like losing himself. And yet, the irony is that these two seemingly opposite value systems can complement one another beautifully, if both are willing to meet halfway. Scorpio, with her grounding nature, can provide Gemini with purpose. She can help him channel his scattered energy into meaningful pursuits, ensuring that his adventures aren't just fleeting thrills but steps toward a greater legacy. With her depth and determination, she shows him the value of permanence, the importance of planting roots, and the richness of investing in one place or one person deeply. Gemini, in turn, offers Scorpio something she rarely allows herself: lightness. He reminds her that life doesn't always have to be about surviving storms, enduring trials, or fighting for permanence. Sometimes, it's about laughter, spontaneity, and dancing in the rain. He shows her that joy can be as meaningful as intensity, that exploration doesn't mean betrayal, and that freedom doesn't necessarily mean disloyalty. With his perspective, he loosens her grip on control, teaching her that letting go can sometimes bring her closer to what she desires most. When they align, their shared values begin to form a beautiful paradox: stability infused with adventure, and freedom infused with loyalty. Together, they can build a life that is both grounded and expansive, one that honors Scorpio's need for commitment while honoring Gemini's need for exploration. This may take the form of shared adventures, traveling together, seeking experiences as a couple, while also maintaining a home base that Scorpio can rely on. It may take the form of Gemini learning to reassure her consistently, not with empty words but with actions that prove his devotion. It may take the form of Scorpio loosening her grasp, trusting that his flights of freedom will always circle back home to her. Their life goals will require constant recalibration. There will be times when Gemini's restless energy collides with Scorpio's desire for permanence. There will be moments when she worries his curiosity will lead him away, and moments when he fears her intensity will tie him down too tightly. But with conscious effort, these moments of tension can become opportunities to strengthen their bond. If they learn to view their differences not as obstacles but as gifts, their values create a partnership richer than most. Scorpio provides the anchor that keeps Gemini from drifting too far, ensuring he builds a life with meaning rather than scattering himself across fleeting adventures. Gemini provides the wings that lift Scorpio when she grows too heavy, reminding her that even the strongest roots benefit from fresh air and sunlight. Together, their shared values and goals become not about choosing one path over the other but about weaving both into a life that feels whole. They discover that it is possible to have permanence and freedom, depth and lightness, stability and adventure. It requires trust, patience, and compromise, but when they succeed, they create a relationship that doesn't just survive differences but thrives because of them. Final thoughts. So, is the Gemini man and Scorpio woman pairing doomed, or destined? The truth, like so much about this union, resists simple answers. This is not a love story written in straight lines, nor is it one filled only with ease, comfort, and predictability. Instead, it is a journey carved in contrasts, built on tension, sustained by passion, and ultimately defined by transformation. To call it easy would be dishonest. To call it impossible would be equally false. The answer lives somewhere in between, somewhere in that delicate, fragile, and yet incredibly powerful space where opposites meet and dare to try. Their love is not about perfection, it is about evolution. For the Gemini man, the Scorpio woman becomes the mirror that forces him to see beyond his words, beyond his laughter, beyond his restless curiosity. Through her, he discovers that freedom does not only mean flight, it can also mean the courage to stay. He learns the beauty of depth, the power of stillness, and the truth that real intimacy often lies not in the next adventure but in the willingness to face the storm together. With her, his life stops being a string of fleeting moments and becomes a story with meaning, weight, and legacy. For the Scorpio woman, the Gemini man becomes the wind that loosens her grip, the light that enters her shadows, the reminder that even the deepest ocean needs the sky above it. Through him, she learns that loyalty is not proven through chains but through trust, that love can be playful as well as profound, and that sometimes letting go is the most powerful form of devotion. He teaches her laughter without betrayal, spontaneity without carelessness, joy without superficiality. With him, her life stops being only about endurance and becomes about rediscovery, renewal, and delight. Together, they create a relationship that is both stormy and electrifying. Their connection is rarely calm, but it is always alive. They argue, they misunderstand, they clash, yet they also forgive, they return, they grow. Every challenge they face becomes an invitation to rise higher or dive deeper, and in the process, they become something more than they were alone. For Gemini, love is no longer a game. For Scorpio, love is no longer a burden. For both, love becomes a transformation, a crucible that reshapes them into stronger, wiser, more complete versions of themselves. It would be easy to dismiss their bond as incompatible, to say that air and water cannot mix without dissolving each other. But that ignores the alchemy of opposites. When Gemini's air meets Scorpio's water, the result is not destruction but creation. It is steam, mysterious, shifting, rising toward the heavens while carrying the essence of both elements. Steam moves mountains, reshapes landscapes, and powers entire worlds. In the same way, this love has the potential to transcend ordinary boundaries, to defy expectations, and to create a connection that is unforgettable, unrepeatable, and utterly transformative. In the end, the Gemini man and Scorpio woman are not about finding the perfect match but about daring to embrace the imperfect one. Their union is about the willingness to grow, to compromise, to lean into the discomfort of difference and to trust that love is big enough to hold contradictions. It is about the paradox of being so different and yet so irresistibly drawn to each other. It is about discovering that true compatibility is not about sameness but about complementarity, not about ease but about endurance, not about predictability but about possibility. For those who step into this pairing with open eyes and open hearts, the rewards are immense. Their love is not ordinary, it is extraordinary precisely because it is hard, precisely because it demands effort, patience, and courage. But those who endure it, those who nurture it, those who surrender to its storm, often find that it leaves them forever changed. They emerge not only with a partner but with a deeper understanding of themselves and of love itself. So, is this pairing doomed or destined? The answer depends on the people within it. For those unwilling to grow, it will collapse under the weight of its contradictions. But for those brave enough to embrace transformation, it becomes a love story that transcends zodiac signs, a story not of perfect harmony but of profound alchemy. Because when Gemini's air meets Scorpio's water, the result is not just steam, it is movement, it is power, it is change. It is a love that can move mountains, reshape worlds, and forever alter the souls of those lucky enough to experience it.